Hello, my name is Pastor Kathy. I'm the pastor of Pleasant Valley Lutheran Church near Malabar Farm and St. Paul Lutheran Church in Lucas, Ohio. Greetings. We are reading through the Bible. We are in Genesis. We are up to chapter 37. We are introducing a new, very major character named Joseph. We've heard about Abraham and then Isaac and then Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. The youngest is Benjamin, is Joseph's full brother. Joseph was the first son of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel. And so Joseph was Jacob's favorite, and this is not good to play favorites. Jacob settled in the land where his father had lived as an alien, the land of Canaan. This is the story of the family of Jacob. Although it's really more the story of Joseph, but we're going to hear about the rest of the family as well. Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. He was a helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. That's his father's secondary wives or concubines. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other children, because he was the son of his old age. He had made him a long robe with sleeves. Well, he made him some kind of robe. This is very ancient Hebrew. In fact, it's so ancient that when they translated it into Aramaic and into Greek, in a translation known as the 70 or the LXX or the Septuagint, the Hebrew translators themselves weren't quite sure how to translate this word. So the Septuagint translated it as a coat of many colors, which was then used by the King James, and as obviously there's been all kinds of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and other references to this multicolored coat. But we don't actually know, was it multicolored? Was it quilted? Was it long-sleeved? What was it? So this version has gone long robe with sleeves because it seems to refer to the hands and feet. So somehow that it completely covers him, therefore it's a long robe, not a short robe. At any rate, Joseph has a special piece of clothing that is very different from all of the rest of his brothers. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. So first he's brought a bad report about his half-brothers. Second, he's got a special coat of some sort, special robe. And then third, verse 5, once Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream that I dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Then your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. So Joseph is not very popular amongst his brothers. Verse 9, he had another dream and told it to his brothers, saying, "Look, I've had another dream. The sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What kind of dream is this that you have had? Shall we indeed come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow down to the ground before you?" So his brothers were jealous of him. But his father kept the matter in mind, because this is after all his favorite, and maybe there's something going on here. Verse 12, now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I'll send you to them." He answered, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Now go and see if it's well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring word back to me." And he sent him from the valley of Hebron. According to the footnote in my study Bible, the geography here is confusing, and they're not sure. They think probably it is a combination of several traditional ways of telling the story. Several oral traditions have been combined to create this written story. So then some of the geography doesn't completely make sense. He came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock?" The man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from a distance, and before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him, possibly because they saw his robe from a distance. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we'll say that a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what becomes of his dreams." But when Reuben, that's the oldest brother, heard it, he delivered him out of their hands, saying, "Let's not take his life." Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the long robe with sleeves that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. Verse 25, Then they sat down to eat, and looking up they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels carrying gum, balm, and resin on their way to carry it down to Egypt. So part of the reason you hear all of that genealogy that was earlier is who is Ishmael. Ishmael was Abraham's brother by Hagar, the Egyptian slave woman. So the secondary son, even though he's firstborn, and then his descendants became the Ishmaelites. So cousins, but only half cousins, and they are traders on camels. Then Judah said to his brothers, so now Judah is the one speaking up to save Joseph's life, not Reuben. Then Judah said to his brothers, What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers agreed. When some Midianite traders passed by, they drew Joseph up, lifting him up out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. He returned to his brothers and said, The boy is gone, and where can I turn? Then they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They had a long robe with sleeves taken to their father, and they said, we have found. See now whether it is your son's robe or not. And he recognized it and said, It's my son's robe. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. So to tear one's garments is a way of saying, I'm very upset, I'm sad, I'm grieving. And back in early 20th century, sometimes people would wear a black armband to indicate that they were mourning. So in this culture, in the Jewish Israelite culture, it is to tear one's clothes. And when you see the tear, then you know that that person is grieving or mourning or very upset about something. And sackcloth is the stuff that you make burlap. It's the stuff you put like sacks of grain, and it is very itchy. And I once did a skit with a group of kids, and I gave them burlap to wear, and they said, "Oh, it's itchy." So yeah, it's very uncomfortable. We don't think about the fact that putting on sackcloth is a way of being miserable, an outward indication of just how miserable you are. So he put on sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. Verse 35. All his sons and all his daughters, so we only named Dinah, but there's a bunch of daughters too, sought to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning. I'm going to die. I'm just going to keep mourning until I die. Thus his father bewailed him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. So this is the introduction of Joseph, one of the coolest characters in the Bible. But before we hear the rest of the story of Joseph, we have to hear the story about his brother Judah. So chapter 38. And this is one of those stories that's hard to understand without understanding the culture, and it's hard to hear as a woman sometimes. Chapter 38. It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and settled near a certain Adulamite whose name was Hira. So there's 12 of them, although Benjamin at this point is still pretty young. They're adults. They do all kinds of things. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. He married her and went into her. She conceived and bore a son, and he named him Again she conceived and bore a son, whom she named Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and she named him Shelah. She was in Chezib when she bore him. Judah took a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. So Judah's married somebody who's not from their kin, not a cousin. The Shua, who is a Canaanite, has 3 kids. The oldest kid is and he finds him a wife called Tamar. But somehow was evil and bad, and somehow God put to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife, and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her. Raise up offspring for your brother." So if you're a woman in that time, in that culture, your Social Security is your children. You're under the care of a man. So you're either under your father, under your husband, under your son. In a pinch, you could maybe be under a brother that is going to look out and take care of you. And you're contributing to the household, and you're carrying water and watching the sheep and doing all the things. But as you get old, who's taking care of you? It's the children are going to take care of you. So it is very important that Tamar have a child. And so since was killed, or somehow God put him to death, she needs a child, and the culture was, that then his brother Onan, it's his responsibility to give Tamar a child, and that child would be known as son, not as Onan's son. But since Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, he spilled his semen on the ground whenever he went in to his brother's wife, so that he would not give offspring to his brother. So the Bible's full of sex. This is not in the lectionary, and yet here it is. Goes into means had sex with, but then pulled out and did not give Tamar children, which she must have for her Social Security to have a child to be taking care of her in her old age. Verse 10, what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up," for he feared that he too would die like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. Technically, it feels like Judah should probably have kept Tamar at his house as his daughter-in-law, as the future promised wife to his 3rd son. But he's basically washed his hands of her and sent her back to her husband. So now she's a widow, and she has no prospects of getting married and having anybody to become an adult and be her Social Security for the future. In the course of time, verse 12, in the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah's time of mourning was over, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, and he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. When Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep," she put off her widow's garments, put on a veil, wrapped herself up, and sat down at the entrance to Anaim, which is on the road to Timnah. So Judah's now a widower, technically could also marry Tamar and provide for her. She saw that Shelah was grown up, yet she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He went over to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come in to you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me, that you may come in to me?" He answered, "I will send you a kid from the flock." And she said, "Only if you give me a pledge until you send it." He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your signet and your cord and the staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she got up and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. So Judah runs into her and agrees to give her all kinds of, "Yes, I am who I am, and I will send you a goat. And I promise to send you the goat, and here's my signet ring and my identifying." I don't have driver's licenses back then. Verse 20, when Judah sent the kid, that is the baby goat, by his friend the Adullamite to recover the pledge from the woman, he could not find her. He asked the townspeople, "Where is the temple prostitute who was at Enaim by the wayside?" But they said, "No prostitute has been here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I haven't found her." Moreover, the townspeople said, "No prostitute has been here." Judah replied, "Let her keep the things as her own, otherwise we will be laughed at. You see, I sent the kid, but you could not find her. Verse 24. About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the whore. Moreover, she is pregnant as a result of whoredom." So that woman that you sent away and don't want anything to do with is pregnant. And Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, "It was the owner of these who made me pregnant." And she said, "Take note, please, whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff." So, you did not do by me what you were supposed to do by me, so I had to take matters into my own hands. So women have no authority, but they had ways of getting the things that they needed to get. Then Judah acknowledged them and said, "She is more right than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not lie with her again. When the time of her delivery came, there were twins in her womb. While she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and bound on his hand a crimson thread, a red thread, saying, "This one came out first." But just then he drew back his hand, and out came his brother. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore he was named Perez, or breach. Afterward his brother came out with a crimson thread on his hand, and he was named Zerah, which maybe means brightness. So a breach and brightness. Why is this story even in here in the middle of Joseph? Why are we being interrupted with a story about sex? In part because Tamar becomes one of the ancestors of King David, because lots of the people in the Bible, lots of the patriarchs and matriarchs were not necessarily righteous. But it's that's part of what makes it that we can know that it's real. If everything was all polished and perfect, we'd be like, that's not real. Humans are not polished, and humans are not perfect, and people do really stupid things. And the ancestors, the patriarchs in the Bible, were no exception to people doing really stupid things. So Tamar has 2 children by way of Judah, who will become part of the tribe of Judah and will become part of the ancestry of King David. And it's just a reminder of how lucky we are to live in the modern world, where women do not necessarily have to have children in order to have Social Security, do not have to have a husband in order to be able to survive in this world. So we live in a very different kind of culture than the Bible was written in. And sometimes we need to remember, There are some major cultural differences between the present day and the past. It doesn't make what is written in the Bible any less applicable. It makes it just as applicable and just as true and just as right. But at grasping them and understanding what was going on involves a lot of understanding cultural differences. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look at you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.